Hi guys! Today I'm going to read the story, the Lesson 2 story from Knowledge 5, the War of 1812, and the story today is called America in 1812, Part 2. So you've already listened to Part 1. Some vocabulary that you're going to need to know is number 1, abandon, and it's a verb. It means to stop doing something, to give up entirely. That means to be done. Committee, it's a noun. It means a group of people who come together to complete a task or make decisions. Patient is a noun that means the ability to wait for a long time without being upset. Sometimes your parents might tell you you need to be patient and you will get done. Suspicious is an adjective. It means having doubts or a feeling that something is wrong. And treaty. Treaty is a noun, and it's a formal agreement between two countries. So if you want to pause it and read these yourself, you may do that. Those are the vocabulary words to help you understand the story. So, America in 1812, Part 2. After the Revolutionary War, each of the first 3 presidents in the United States wanted the United States and Great Britain to be friends again. These are George Washington, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson. These are the first 3 presidents of the United States. Even before the Napoleonic Wars began, George Washington had tried to establish a peaceful relationship with the British. Under their leadership, the United States and Great Britain signed a treaty called Jay's Treaty. A treaty is an agreement between 2 countries. We just went over that. In this treaty, the British promised to not get involved or interfere with the United States' business or activities. So do you think that you may pause it and talk to someone about this, or think about it for a moment if you're in class. Do you think that the British kept their promise? All right, no, they didn't. They did not keep their promise. They broke the treaty. So based on what you just heard, or what other event led some people in the United States to want to go to war with Great Britain? They broke the treaty. And you can name some other things that they did from the previous story. During this time, one of the most common ways for 2 countries to maintain a good relationship was to trade with each other. The United States sent flour and tobacco and other goods to Great Britain. Great Britain sent tea and manufactured goods to America. When the Napoleonic Wars began in Europe, France and Great Britain became enemies. The United States was caught in the middle. The U.S. government really did not want to have to get involved. So the United States was friends with Great Britain and with France, and now the 2 were fighting. Well, merchants in New England relied on trade with Britain to run their businesses, and France had helped America during the Revolutionary War. The United States wanted to keep that friendship too. However, when U.S. ships, cargo, and sailors were being threatened, especially by the British, the United States could not ignore it. So what do you think the United States will do? You may pause it and think about this for just a moment. In 1807, while Thomas Jefferson was president, something happened at sea that made many Americans very angry with the British. As they often did, a British ship stopped in a U.S. ship at sea, and the American ship was the USS Chesapeake. When the British commander demanded that the Chesapeake be searched, the American captain refused. The British commander did not like that he ordered his men to open fire. Several American soldiers died in the attack. After the members of Congress began to call for war with Britain, members of the Congress are the people that are elected to represent the United States for each state. Those members of Congress who wanted the United States to go to war were known as the War Hawks. As time went on, President Jefferson was losing patience with the British. Patience refers to the ability to wait for something without getting upset. So if Thomas Jefferson was losing his patience, what do you think that means? Pause it and think about that for a second. Yes, that means that he couldn't wait any longer. He tried and tried to stop their aggression in response to the attack on the USS Chesapeake. The government passed the Embargo Act of 1807. And an Embargo Act is a government order that limits trade. The Embargo Act stated that U.S. ports would be closed to foreign ships, especially British ships. An act is a law made by the government. The U.S. government hoped that British would lose so much money that they would be forced to change their ways. However, the Embargo Act caused more problems for American farmers and merchants in New England and New York than it did for the British. So you see how very little their ships are? That means sitting there without a job. They usually have lots of ships in their harbor to help them with their trade, and that's how they made money in the United States at that time. So Britain simply traded with other nations, but the coastal New England towns depended upon trade with Great Britain. The merchants there were losing money by not being able to send or receive goods. In the end, the United States had to abandon the Embargo Act. You might think that what was happening at sea was enough to drive the United States to war with Great Britain. But there were even more problems on American land. Even though Britain had lost the 13 colonies to America, it still had control of the land in the northern Great Lakes region. And the northwestern territories, Britain also controlled part of what is now Canada. The British had forts and outposts along the U.S.-Canadian borders. So you can see the territory of the United States. Most Americans during this time were farmers. Many settlers were moving west to search for land to farm. Although the wagons were on American land, the U.S. government began to suspect that the British were interfering with the American land and with Americans who were settling in this northern territory, especially in the Ohio River Valley and in Indiana Territory. They believed that Britain was using its outposts in Canada to help Native Americans who were fighting to defend their land from the settlers. In 1812, many Native Americans fought to remove settlers from their land in the Battle of the Tippecanoe. The U.S. Army fought back. The American soldiers had reasons to believe that the Native Americans received weapons from the British, and the British denied it. They insisted that they were only trading with Native Americans and nothing more. Do you think that's true? But now the Warhawks, those who supported going to war with Britain, were furious. The British were attacking American ships at sea, and now they were causing trouble on American soil as well. The Warhawks in Congress put together a committee. Many of the Warhawks' supporters in Congress were from the northern and western territories of the United States. They were the ones who were most suspicious of the British. James Madison was the fourth president of the United States. Like the other presidents before him, he tried to find a way to avoid conflict with Britain. He knew that the United States was still a young nation with fewer than 8 million people. He knew that they did not have a large army or a navy, but the Warhawks believed that if the United States was going to fight Britain, now was the time. Britain was used to fighting, Britain was busy fighting the Napoleonic Wars. It would not have enough soldiers, sailors, or ships to fight the United States. So, some of the Americans thought that winning a war with Britain might also be an opportunity to gain more land. There was land in the north and to the south that they wanted. Finally, the Warhawks wanted to prove that the United States was a strong country. Still, President Madison did not want to rush into war. He continued to ask the British government to stop interfering with U.S. ships and to stop trading with and arming Native Americans. However, the British continued to ignore the president's requests, and the Warhawks demanding war. James Madison finally agreed on June 18, 1812. The United States declared war on Britain. And this is where we got the War of 1812. So why do you think the United States wanted to have the relationship with Britain and wanted to have a good relationship with Britain and France? Pause it and think about that for a second. So what term was used to describe the people in the U.S. government who wanted to go to war with Great Britain? Pause it. Yes, it was the Warhawks. What events led the Warhawks to want to go to war with Great Britain in the early 1800s? The British blockaded U.S. ports, impressed sailors, stole U.S. cargo, broke a treaty to the United States, and attacked the USS Chesapeake, and they armed the Native Americans. So they did all of those things. There was a long list of things that they didn't agree with that made them want to go to war. So why do you think the Native Americans did not want settlers on their land? Pause it. Some of the reasons you might have thought were that they feared the settlers would take their land and away from them, right? Another one. Why would the British want to arm Native Americans? And how would that benefit the British? Pause it. Yes, the Native Americans might want to help the British get some more land or get their land back. Good job, guys. All right. Have a good day.